My name is Elenja and my husband is Selomja here. We've been married for 16 years. We met in school and God has been so good. We have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl.
I'm Daniel and this is my wife.
Hello, my name is Tony. Nice to meet you all.
So we've been married for 5 years and we have 2 children. You are Drumo and you are no. God's grace and God's own.
So my name is Anthony Ledis.
We've been married for 48 years. We have 3 grown kids, adult kids, with 8 grandchildren.
I am George Nikwe, and this is my wife.
Delasi Nikwe.
Yeah, and we've been married for 11 months now.
Grace.
Well, in addition to grace, I think if you are ignorant about the path on which you are traveling, it's most likely to destroy you. Many people don't understand marriage. They have no idea. They don't know that God has a purpose for marriage and a plan for marriage. And also, let me end by saying, He even has a goal for marriage. You're right. So when you are newly married, when we got married, we ran into the same trouble. We didn't know anything. We were just running in circles.
We were in love.
We were in love. So we thought that love was enough or sufficient to take you through. No, it won't. But until you get to know that God has a purpose, God has a plan, God has a goal in marriage, you are most likely to destroy your own marriage. Yeah. And this is what accounts for today's number of divorces, both in the church and outside. You know, if what has worked for us is that, first of all, our first few years, I'm sure you are aware of it, because we have said it a few times, wasn't easy. My wife, what you see today is not what she was. She was a very quiet woman.
Very quiet.
Extremely quiet. There were certain times I went to her house and I asked her whether there was a problem. No, there was no problem. She was just a quiet person. She was an introvert. I'm sure she is flipped. She's no more an introvert.
I am. But all right. That's why I say grace.
I am extraordinary. I remember there was, when I came to Agape for instance, I will go into people and shake hands with them and introduce myself to them. I want to know you. That's not there. You know? So back to divorce, the number of divorces or why divorce is so rampant so often. It is mostly because people don't understand. Yes. And what has helped my wife and I in our marriage is that very early we got to know that, or we had one thing in common, that's reading. Well, when we got married, we were not Christians, or we were not believers, born again Christians. But it happened along the way. And what helped us was the reading part.
Yeah.
We read a lot of secular books when we were not believers. So that helped us
to read the Bible.
Read the Bible and also read anointed literature. Authors. Yeah. People who have written Christian stuff. And that helped us. And it made us really look closer at the Bible, because the things that we read by anointed authors help us. One of my mentors today for me is an author. He's my mentor. His book is always in my pocket.
Call the name.
Oh, Larry Crabb.
Larry Crabb.
Larry Crabb is a wonderful writer. And you read his book. I've read this book about 10 times already. And not only do I read the books, I try to implement the things that I read. That is what has helped us. Because when we read, we discuss.
And I think also for me, my in-laws were our biggest model, his parents. My home was not what I would call a Christian home. I remember when I was, when I visited Grandma and Grandpa then, my first long stay with them was when our first child was born, and when he was a month, I took him to them in Ho, and I stayed with them for, about 2-3 months. And there was not a single day that I did not hear Grandma and Grandpa praying at dawn, not one. And I said, wow, I love this. And I also got to know that Grandma and Grandpa had a nickname, Joseph and Mary, in the community because they were always together. Grandma was, they were old. My husband is the baby of the family. And at the time we were married, they were already old. But they went to church dutifully, faithfully together every Sunday. And Grandpa will be ahead because he was faster and Grandma was slower. But she will be behind. And a few meters, Grandpa would turn around to see whether she was coming. And those were, days that I remember, and I just saw how they did marriage. And it was something that I coveted so much. And I would tell Grandma, oh, I love your marriage. And she said, your marriage will be better. And for me, that was a blessing. That was a blessing that I received that early. And it has been a real blessing.
Yes, and also we have so many divorce cases today because people, my observation is that people don't believe the Bible anymore. They pick and choose. Because if the Bible really is a book that you believe in, and you know that it's the word of God, or God's word, and he says that marriage is for a lifetime. The only time that a man or a husband and a wife are probably permitted to divorce is when there's an unfaithfulness. That is the only time we should even think or consider divorce. But today, that's not so. This is why I'm saying that people don't believe in the Bible anymore. They are divorcing for financial reasons, for what they call incompatibility. They're divorcing because they don't like the woman. I just don't like her anymore. The man doesn't like him anymore, her anymore. For all kinds of reasons, other than the thing that God says. Remember, in the Bible it says that in the beginning it was not so. God says that in the beginning divorce was not even permitted. They only permitted because of the hardness of a man's heart. So if we really take the Bible as the word of God and you really are adhering to what the Bible says, I think nobody should even flirt with the idea of divorce. Divorce is rampant today because people think that that's an option. It's not an option. If God says that in the beginning it was not so, it means that no, there was no divorce in the beginning. But today it's become an option. It's trendy. Yes, we have divorce lawyers and people who look into and teach you how to divorce.
Yeah, and as biblical counselors, we also have come to realize that many couples are not reading the Bible and they are not praying together. And the excuse they give is that because of their schedules, their work schedules. And that takes away a lot from their lives, because if as a couple you are not praying together, you are depriving yourself of the power that comes with synergy. It says one will put 1,000 to flight, but two will put 10,000 to flight. So when your marriage is attacked, and it will be attacked, especially if you are Christians, if the enemy of God's children, Satan, is after you because you want to have a good marriage, you have no power to fight because you are not in the scriptures. And so it's one of the reasons, and we have heard couple after couple, when they come with challenges into counseling and you want to find out whether they are praying together at all, they'll say no. Why don't you pray together? Oh, she doesn't wake up early, or I leave the house early, and all kinds of excuses. How about in the evening when you get back home? It's the same excuse. So it's one of the reasons why the power to fight, even in difficult times, has eroded most young people or most marriages.
And also, let me say this. When people get married, they don't work on their marriages. Mm-hmm. They tend to leave the marriage on what we will call autopilot, or we say they put it on a back burner. Marriage is work. It's work. Occasionally I hear young people ask me, well, why don't you organize post-marriage counseling? I said, there's nothing like that. The seminars, the
retreats,
conferences,
the
retreats that your church organizes
and
are the things that will help your marriage. Nobody will sit you again in class and be teaching you like they did for pre-marriage counseling. No, it doesn't work that way. And so the post-marriage thing seems to be something that you do out of the love that you have for your own marriage.
Yeah.
When you hear a church organizing a conference or seminar, you opt to go. And something interesting, we from our observation, we notice that the marriages that are in trouble rather don't want to go to these conferences. They don't do conferences. They are not interested. Yes.
Yeah. So it's what marriage is.
So that explains why the divorce cases are so many. You know, I just mentioned earlier on that reading has helped us a lot. And I'll refer to another book that has helped my wife and I. It's called Love and Respect. Love and Respect talks basically about a vicious cycle in which, you see, conflicts cannot be avoided. You can't avoid conflicts in your marriage. If you do, you will not really mature. Conflicts are good for marriages because it exposes who you are. This woman you see here is a mirror of me. The way I respond to her just indicates to me who I'm truly am. She doesn't make me angry. Because anytime she says something that could trigger anger in me, I could be angry, but my response is my responsibility. You know? So, marriage just makes you a better person. Let me put it that way. Because you are supposed, as a Christ-centered or
a Christ person,
yes, a Christian, you are supposed to mature. How do you mature? If you don't go through stages in life. Joyce Meyer puts it in a very, very beautiful way. Joyce Meyer says that, you see, if you fail a test in your Christian walk, you will repeat. And you must repeat until you pass. You know? So if, for instance, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control, if you are lacking in self-control, God will ensure that you go through tests, not temptations, tests that will ensure that you begin to develop self-control. That's what it is. You know?
I think you asked about a practical example in our own married life, yes. Which we overcame. And I will refer to a time we were moving from one church to another. And that was many years ago. And what we did not do well, we had agreed to move from the church. And this was an Orthodox church. And so when we became born again, you know, we stayed there 10 years after. And then we decided to move. What we did not do was to
decide.
To agree, yes, agree on which particular church we were moving to. And so when we came out, there was this controversy about Church A and Church B, which to go to. And he wanted to go to Church A, and I wanted to go to Church B. And we had reasons why we didn't want to. I didn't want to go to where he wanted to go, and he didn't want to go to where I was. So unfortunately, we did not handle that point well. So it became a very protracted conflict in our marriage, and you will not believe this conflict situation lasted 8 years before we resolved it. But what helped us was, in those 8 years, we went to different churches, but we were all still very, very actively involved in the churches we're in. And we still pray together sometimes, but we also noticed that praying and doing, you know, Bible study kind of just brought us back to where we were supposed to be. Because as we have come, you know, as we have come to realize, even though we were separated, in different churches, we were also working towards God. And so if you look at that picture as a triangle, you know, if he was walking back towards God, I was walking towards God, the distance between us became narrower and narrower until we came back to where we were supposed to be. So that was what happened.
So in a nutshell, what really helped us in those days is resolving the conflict in a godly way.
In a godly way, yes. Eventually.
Recent times, what happens to me is that if we are drifting into a conflict situation, what I've just mentioned earlier on, the vicious cycle or the crazy cycle. Remember the crazy cycle. I hear that. And so my response to the situation just changes. Remember, because you see, the crazy cycle is described as a cycle in which you can both of you get on and you will not be able to even remember why the conflict started in the first place. So one of you has the responsibility to slow down the cycle or stop it totally. And it takes two to tango, I'm told. I hear the tango dance is a very complicated dance. So if one of you is able to remember this and can stop the cycle from, you can always resolve your conflicts. Some of them are very, very little things, things that you don't even want to talk about, you know. And so resolving conflicts in a godly way is what will help every marriage. Yes. Larry Crabb is the marriage builder. Larry Crabb, Marriage Builder. It's an excellent book. I recommend to every married couple. And then we have the Emerson Egerich. He also does ministry with a wife.
Yes.
Sarah Egerich. They have written this Love and Respect I told you about. Wonderful couple. Yeah. Yes.
Love
and he talks about how your love for your wife will motivate her to respect you, and how her respect for you will also motivate you to love her. So it's also a motivating cycle. Yeah. Just as I've talked about the crazy cycle. You see, when I show an unloving attitude towards my wife, I motivate her to be disrespectful. Yeah. All right? So that's the one part. Then there's a motivating cycle that also will help couples to. Let's not for a moment deceive ourselves that because we are Christians, we can unconditionally love all the time.
No.
It doesn't happen. No. The unconditional love is it is good, it's a very good thing. But between husband and wife, you find out that we tend to manipulate one another. We manipulate one another. Instead of ministering to one another, we manipulate one another. And Larry Crabb talks wonderfully about how to minister to each other instead of manipulating one another. Yes. Anytime you do something, let me just do it briefly. Anytime you do something to your spouse, regardless of his or her attitude, you are ministering.
Yeah.
All right. Or when you do it in respect of your reverence for Christ, you are ministering. Anything that you do outside this thing, you are manipulating your spouse. Let's say, for instance, it comes to sex. All right. And let's say I'm ironing my wife's clothes just to soften her. Whereas in the night she will have sex with me. No, I'm manipulating her. I should be able to iron the clothes without having any reward in mind.
Any ulterior
Or let's say
motive.
that she is cooking my special dish for me because at the back of her mind, she wants something in return. That's manipulation. Ministry, you do it regardless of your spouse's attitude.
For example, the Love and Respect book. The Love and Respect book, that's Ephesians that chapter in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 33. So husbands, love your wives, and wives, respect your husbands. And he did a whole lot of numbers on those books. And he says that if you love your husband because if you respect your husband because he loves you, or the other one is what?
Energizing cycle.
Yes.
Energizing cycle.
Okay,
Yes.
That's the energizing cycle.
Yes.
I respect because he loves me. He loves me because I respect him. That's energizing. But the third cycle, the last one, is rewarding cycle.
Yeah, the rewarding cycle.
The rewarding cycle is really the ministry type. That is that I respect him regardless of his love for me. And he loves me regardless of my respect for me. And we do that because we are looking towards Christ. That Ephesians 5:21 says, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. So if we do things for each other, regardless of their response to what we do, I mean, if we are not doing it, even if I'm not doing it respectfully, but he loves me all the same, that's ministry. If he is loving me regardless of my disrespect, that's ministry. Because from that, you will see that if he continues doing that, with time, I'm going to sit back and say, this guy, what's the matter with him? With all this disrespect I'm showing him, he is still loving me.
Yeah.
And that's something. It changes my heart, So that's ministry, really.